Hi everybody, I'm TJ, this is Baby Star, and welcome back to part 2 of this video about my egg donor journey. If you missed part 1 of this video, you can see it here. And I'll also put a link to it down in the description box. So in early December 2020, I found out that I could import eggs from overseas, from the World Egg Bank in the United States, into Australia to my local clinic that was only 40 minutes away from me, up the road in the Gold Coast. And I was just stunned. I felt incredibly relieved. I was so grateful. I knew this was my path. I was really, really excited. I signed up with that clinic 40 minutes away. I started having lots of conversations with the doctors there and with the staff there about everything involved in this process because I didn't know that much about it. On the 21st of December 2020, I had an appointment with the doctor there and he wanted me to get a whole lot of tests done. Luckily, the previous year when I did my first IVF attempt, I had actually had some MRIs done, some ultrasounds done to check if I had endometriosis or adenomyosis or polyps because some of those things had been suspected and it all had been ruled out. So he was very happy with that. I didn't need to go and get all those tests again, but he did want me to get a new test, which I hadn't had done before, to see if I was still ovulating. And the reason that that's important, I found out, is that if you're still ovulating and you're about to do an embryo transfer with a donor egg or a donor embryo, you can do what's called a natural cycle. Whereas if you're not ovulating, you have to do what's called a medicated cycle. So a natural cycle basically means that you don't have to take any medication to get your body ready for the transfer. They give you a trigger shot, so you ovulate, and then they time it from the date of that trigger shot. Whereas if you're not ovulating, they have to give you medication, they have to give you hormones to simulate ovulation, to kind of make your body do what it would otherwise do naturally if you were still ovulating. So you can still do an embryo transfer, you can still use a donor egg or use a donor embryo after you've stopped ovulating. So if you're a bit older and you're no longer ovulating, you can still do it. You just have to do what's called a medicated cycle. Because I was now 47, it was quite possible I was no longer ovulating, so he wanted to check that. So on the 29th of December, right before the end of the year 2020, I did what's called a day 21 progesterone test to see if I was still ovulating. I also did a whole lot of other blood tests that the doctor wanted me to do, just general fertility tests and general health tests. If you know any women who are older and who might be thinking about wanting to have a baby, share this video with them because I'm sharing a lot of information like this that will be very helpful for them that they may not know, relevant for them if they're an older woman wanting to have a baby. So while all of this was happening, while I was getting all these tests, I was also researching the World Egg Bank and I was writing emails to them, to their donor coordinator, trying to figure out how does this all work, how do they choose their egg donors, which egg donors am I allowed to look at, which ones are eligible under Australian regulations, how much does it all cost, what are my different options. So that was really important research I had to do. And I ended up choosing an option with the World Egg Bank, which guaranteed that you would get 2 embryos. So you paid a little bit more than you normally would pay, but it guaranteed that you would get 2 5-day blastocysts, so 2 embryos that were good quality. And basically the guarantee worked that you did your round with the 6 eggs that you paid for. If they didn't get 2 good embryos, then they would try again with another 6 eggs from the same egg donor. And if that still didn't work, then they would let you choose a different egg donor and they would try again. So basically they were guaranteeing you 2 embryos. So it was worth the money. I felt it was worth paying the extra money. Now I'm going to do another video, completely separate video, talking about how much all of this cost with the actual figures. So I don't want to put that all into this video. This video is long enough. So once I've made that video, I will put a link to it up here and I'll put a link to it in the description box so you'll be able to watch that and see exactly how much this all costs. Basically, I chose the more expensive option so that I would have the embryo guarantee because I really didn't want to do all of this and spend all this money and go through all of this and not get an embryo out of it. It was worth paying extra for me to have that peace of mind. Everything in my life is about peace of mind. And right now I'm going to take these earrings off because I can't have peace of mind while I'm wearing them because my baby's just discovered I'm wearing them. She's finally at the age where she's figured out about earrings. Finally figured it out, you sneaky beak. So then I spent the whole of the Christmas and New Year period at the end of 2020 choosing my egg donor and choosing my sperm donor. This was not a small decision. This is a very big decision and I really put a lot of energy into it. I'm actually going to make a completely separate video about how I chose my sperm donor and a completely separate video about how I chose my egg donor, going into exactly what I was thinking, what criteria I used, how many donors I was given to choose from, what information I found out about them, and how I made this choice, because there's a lot I want to share about that. I know it's going to be very, very helpful for people who need to choose sperm donors or egg donors, so I won't be going into that in this video. But once I've made those 2 videos, I'll put the link up here and I'll put links down in the description box for you. What I will say is that once I made my choice of my egg donor and my sperm donor, I was really, really happy with my choice. I absolutely love both of these donors. Every single time I ever looked at either of their profiles, all I felt was joy. Both of their pictures just radiate joy. And I just knew in my bones, I knew in my heart, I knew in my whole being that these were the people I was supposed to choose. So in the end, it was a very clear choice for me, and I was very, very happy with that choice. What I will tell you, just for the purposes of this video, was that the sperm donor I chose was 26 years old at the time that I chose him, but when he donated his sperm, he was 24 years old, and they had 2 different kinds of vials of sperm. One was called IUI and one was called IUI-ART, and I chose the IUI vial because it had more millions and millions of sperm in it per vial than the other type. And I decided to buy 1 vial because I felt like 1 vial would be enough for what I was attempting. And with the egg donor, what I'll tell you now is that I ended up choosing a 22-year-old egg donor. She was a new egg donor for the World Egg Bank, and they had only just retrieved her eggs the week before I chose her, and they had gotten 18 eggs. And so it was really amazing timing. So they froze her eggs, and the deal that I purchased gave me access to 6 of those eggs. And obviously, if it didn't work, then I would be able to use more of her eggs, so that they would fulfill the guarantee of 2 embryos. So the next step was I had to get hold of a detailed genetic reports for both of my donors, one from the Seattle Sperm Bank, which is where the sperm donor had come from, even though it was through my Australian clinic. The actual donor was originally from the Seattle Sperm Bank, and from the World Egg Bank. So I could put these 2 reports side by side and just check that these 2 people weren't carriers for the same genetic conditions. Both of my donors had really great health reports, and their genetic reports just showed like 1 or 2 tiny, incredibly rare tiny things that were very unlikely to happen. But if both of them had carried the exact same gene, then it would have been a very high probability that my child would have that condition. But if only one of the donors had that rare thing and the other one didn't, then it was very unlikely the child would get that. So it's actually compulsory that you have to check the 2 genetic reports to check that they don't both have the same rare genetic condition. And what I find really funny about that is that you can't do that if you just have sex with a guy or have sex with your husband to have a baby. It's not like the egg and the sperm meet in the fallopian tube and compare their genetic history. So you're really taking a big gamble normally the way nature has sex. But with this, it's actually very precise, and you get to find out if you're going to have these problems. Click a like, give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying this video, and that will encourage YouTube to show it to other women who are interested in this stuff. So on the 4th of January 2021, I signed both contracts with the egg donor and the sperm donor with the World Egg Bank and the Seattle Sperm Bank. And that's it. We were locked in. We had my 2 donors. Woohoo! The same day, I also got my results back from my progesterone test to find out if I was still ovulating. And it showed that I was still ovulating even though I was 47. So probably explains why I still had a really bad period pain even until the age of 47, which meant that I could do a natural cycle when I did my embryo transfer, not a medicated cycle. So that was also really good news, because I'd rather not have to take all that estrogen if I don't have to. Then on the 20th of January that month, I paid for both of my donors and signed 4 billion documents about it all. There were a million back and forths over email. Basically what was going to happen was they were going to send the sperm from Seattle Sperm Bank to the World Egg Bank where the eggs were. They were actually going to create the embryo at the World Egg Bank in Arizona in the United States. That's how it was all going to work. By the way, if you have any questions about any of this stuff I'm saying, please ask me below in the comments about anything about the embryos, the eggs, the whole thing, the sperm. Just ask me and I'll answer in the comments. So on the 30th of January 2021, I received an email from the World Egg Bank introducing me to their embryologist, because remember, they were the people that were going to be making the embryo. So it was pretty nice. I thought that they introduced me to him, and his name was Brian. And I couldn't help but think, Brian, you're a very naughty boy. Anyway, Brian was really lovely. He and I were in constant contact. I asked him a million questions, as you can imagine, because I'm the sort of person who asks a million questions, and he was very patient and very polite, and he always wrote back to me and answered in great detail all my questions about the fertilization and the eggs and the embryos and the sperm and everything. So I was really grateful to Brian. the embryologist. By the way, the reason I'm able to remember all of these exact dates and so much detail of everything that happened is because I actually kept a very detailed digital journal through this whole fertility journey. I also kept a very detailed digital journal through my whole pregnancy, and I'm actually keeping one this year where I do a page in her digital journal of every day of her first year of life. I love doing journals, and I found a fantastic app that I'm using. I will probably make a video at some point just telling you guys how I make my digital journals, because I don't think anyone else knows about this app and how I'm doing it, and I print them into a book. So I'll make a video at some point, and when I do, I'll put the link up here, and I'll also put a link down in the description box below. So I've just been looking through my digital journals, and it's reminded me of exactly everything that happened and the dates and all the details. That's why I'm able to share them all with you in this video. And I've made a million notes about it all, which is what I'm using, and it's what my baby keeps trying to grab. Eat. So then in the first week of February, I had to sign a lot of papers and send a lot of documents overseas to enable the sperm to be sent from Seattle to Arizona, from the Seattle Sperm Bank to the World Egg Bank. So basically the plan was that they were going to create the embryos, they were going to fertilize the egg with the sperm in the second week of February. My period was due around the 22nd of February. Because I was going to be doing a natural cycle, I was probably going to ovulate somewhere between day 12 and day 16 of my cycle, and the transfer would be 5 days after that. So we were expecting to do the embryo transfer in mid-March. So this was cutting it quite fine. They were going to create the embryo in the second week of February and send it to us by mid-March in Australia, on the other side of the world, in the middle of a global pandemic. And the problem was, what if the first attempt doesn't work, and then they have to try again with a second lot of eggs, or I have to choose a new egg donor? It was just looking like the embryos just might not get here to Australia in time for my embryo transfer. So we actually made the decision to push my embryo transfer back a month. That may not seem like much, but when you're already 47, and I'd had this realization that every month I wait is a month I'm not going to spend with my baby at the end of my life, I really didn't want to keep putting it off and putting it off. But I was willing to put it off one extra month because, let's face it, we waited this long and the logistics were just too difficult to get around with the pandemic and the mail and the eggs and everything. It was just too much. Share with me in the comments if you've encountered sort of logistical roadblocks like this when you've been trying to do IVF attempts or IUI attempts or any fertility attempts. Just share with us what your experiences have been with the logistics. Sometimes the logistics can be the biggest hurdle, like people trying to get hold of sperm and they don't get hold of the sperm and things like that. But the advantage of putting it back a month meant that it gave me time to do a very special test on my uterus that I did that really helped me to prepare for my embryo transfer. And I'll talk about that in the next video, so keep watching onto the next video because I'm going to explain all that in the next video. Ryan, the embryologist, emails me and tells me that they're going to inseminate the eggs on the 10th of February at 3 p.m. Arizona time, which was a Wednesday, which in Australia was 9 a.m. Thursday morning, because of the big time difference. So I wrote a post on my Baby Village Facebook group, which I've told you about in other videos, how I set up this supportive, beautiful Facebook group with a lot of people in it who are cheering me on. If you don't know about that, I talked about it in this video here, and I'll also put a link in the description box to that video. One of the best things I ever did was set up that group. So I did a post in that Facebook Baby Village saying, oh my God, they're about to fertilize my eggs with my sperm in Arizona, 3 p.m. Wednesday for those of you in America, 9 a.m. Thursday for those of you in Australia. And I basically got all my friends from around the world to send love to Arizona at the exact moment they were fertilizing the eggs. And they all did it. And it was so beautiful. And for those of you who are interested in details of stuff like this, they used a process to fertilize the eggs called ICSI. I have to actually look at this to read it because it's a very long word. ICSI. Intracytoplasmic sperm injection. ICSI. It basically means that they inject a single sperm into the egg using a very fine, small needle, rather than just putting the egg in a petri dish and surrounding it by 50,000 sperm and saying the best man wins. It's a different approach, and it's better for fertility stuff like this, especially with frozen eggs. If you're finding all these kind of technical details helpful, give a thumbs up or like on this video because it will encourage YouTube to show it to other women like you who are interested in this stuff. So the next day, Brian, the embryologist, emailed me to say that all 6 eggs had survived the fertilization. Can you believe it? All 6 of them survived! And he told me he would be in touch in a week to let me know if any of them made it to the stage of becoming an embryo. Obviously, what you're wanting in this is an embryo, a healthy embryo. So I just had to wait for a whole week with bated breath, and all my friends everywhere were all waiting. We just didn't know. I mean, I had the guarantee, so I knew if it didn't work, they would try again, but still, we really wanted it to work. And I basically told all my friends to send baby dust to Arizona for that whole week. Just send baby dust, send baby dust. You sent baby dust too, didn't you? You were sending baby dust from the other side, because this is when they created your body, your little embryo that turned into you from the egg and the sperm. So then a week later, Brian the embryologist wrote to me telling me that they had actually managed to create 3 healthy embryos. Look at them. Aren't they just beautiful? I was absolutely thrilled, as I had actually only been expecting to get 2 embryos out of this. So getting 3 was just amazing. It was a miracle. So they froze the embryos and then they sent them on their long journey across the ocean to Australia. The whole time I was pregnant, I used to joke with everyone that this little person was the only person who got to travel that year, because she traveled from America to Australia in an airplane, and she was an embryo. No one else was traveling, no one else was allowed to fly that year. I got a call on the 4th of March 2021 that the embryos had arrived safely at my clinic on the Gold Coast. Oh my God, I was so excited. Meanwhile, I was using those months, that time while I was waiting, to get my body ready to do the embryo transfer. And in the next part of this video, which you can see here, I'm going to talk about how I got my body into the optimum state of preparation for the embryo transfer so that they would be able to successfully put this embryo into my womb. So definitely watch that. Big love to all of you mamas and to all of you future mamas. I'm sending so much baby dust. See you in the next video. Bye!